From Olympic City and the home of Pikes Peak, this is the Automotive ADHD Show. All right, here we are rocking it on the Automotive ADHD Show, heard around the world as a podcast and on the radio, 91.7 KLZR, Saturday mornings in Southern Colorado. My name is Matt West. I am here to talk about cars, and you have tuned into the correct car show. I have a fun show for you. Happy Labor Day, by the way. It is, of course, a day to take some time off, enjoy yourself, enjoy the family, enjoy wrenching on some cars. You've been working hard. You've been working hard to afford the cars. You deserve it. Now, of course, if you are working on this Labor Day, then I want to thank you for that. That is fantastic. You make the world go round. And of course, I realize a great number of my listeners are in other countries. And you might be wondering, what the hell am I talking about? I know. We celebrate Labor Day here. It is a way to thank the workers, to thank the people who make everything work. So that is what we do. So I hope you've been enjoying your 3-day weekend. And I have a fun show in the works for you today. Going to be talking a little bit about speed limits. New York wants to pass a bill to require car manufacturers to have speed limiters installed in all cars after January 1st, 2024. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk a little bit about a 27-liter Ford Crown Victoria. It's a tank engine. That's really cool. And there is a gentleman who has had the first medical procedure conducted, at least powered, by a Rivian RT1 pickup truck. He had a vasectomy, by the way, and he was powered by his truck. So we're gonna talk about that. We're gonna talk about it. That is going to be pretty interesting. And I have a few other fun things to talk about. Look, it's Labor Day. I'm having fun hanging out. You might be as well. We're just going to kick back, enjoy talking a little bit about cars. Now, ladies, gentlemen, TVR Cerbras, if you were listening a few weeks ago, you know what that's about. Anyway, let's before we do that, I want to talk about how we have won as car enthusiasts. We have won in the debate about buttons. Yeah. I've talked about this a few times before, but I've never taken a hardline stance on it, which is that buttons inside cars are a lot better than touchscreens. You might agree with me on that. I talked a little bit about this a few months ago during the Pikes Peak Hill Climb. When I gave my recap, my experience attending the hill climb, and also talking to racing driver Jimmy Ford, there was also an issue with Randy Popst's car. Now, Randy Popst is a racing driver. He often drives for Motor Trend as well. He's their, performance driver, their professional driver. And he was racing in a Tesla, and the Tesla, built by Unplugged Performance, was a very good race car. It was very fast, but the problem is that if you knew anything about Pikes Peak this year, you know that the weather conditions were terrible. It was cold. Visibility sucked. There was even snow up by Devil's Playground, and I'm not speaking from secondhand accounts. No, I was there at Devil's Playground at 4 a.m, and there was snow on the ground, and it was foggy, and you couldn't see. There was ice. I mean, I was there, okay? So it was pretty bad, but Randy couldn't turn on the defroster in his Tesla race car because it uses a touchscreen, the big center touchscreen, the big old iPad in the dash basically on a Tesla. Well, he couldn't use it with his racing gloves on. It wouldn't work with the touchscreen, and he couldn't take his gloves off because he was in the middle of driving 100 miles an hour up a mountain in the fog, and so he couldn't turn his defroster on, which was a problem. Now, if he had a physical button, this wouldn't be an issue. He could reach down without even looking, feel the knob, feel the button, and turn it on and carry about his racing with a now defogged windshield. He could do that. So we have, in a motorsports context at least, proven that buttons are better. Randy Popst is testament to that. And now the thing is, an actual study has come out now. This study has come out of Sweden, and it says that buttons are better. And here's how they tested this. So they drove they drove a couple of cars back to back, okay? And they took a BMW iX, as well as a 17-year-old Volvo. They didn't say which Volvo it was, but that 17-year-old Volvo would probably be one of the P2 chassis Volvos, so like an S60 or XC70, something like that. And what they did is they lined them up side by side and both drove them on the highway at exactly 68 miles an hour, which is 1 mile an hour short of another great number. However, they drove them side by side and assigned the drivers a number of tasks that they had to do. Things like turning on the climate control, turning on the heated seats, turning up and down the radio. There were a number of tasks that they were assigned to do. And here's the thing. In the Volvo, which had physical buttons and dials, they measured the distance it took for the driver to complete those tasks. Instead of timing it, they measured distance. And that's an important thing here, and we'll get into why. But it took the driver 306 meters to complete those tasks using the buttons and knobs in the car. Now, in comparison, and this is where it gets pretty significant here, the vehicle with the touchscreen, the BMW iX, that took 900 meters to complete the exact same tasks. That is a massive difference. Think of it this way. That's 900 meters that your eyes aren't on the road, and that's not good. That's not good. That's a huge distance that your eyes aren't on the road, that you're not looking at, and you're looking at the touchscreen. And that's a problem. 306 meters again for buttons, 900 meters for the touchscreen. And where this becomes an issue is anytime you're driving. Anytime you're driving, you are traveling a distance, and that distance is time that you can hit something. That's distance that something can run out in front of you, a child, an animal, a landmine, whatever, in case those happen to be running in front of you at any given moment. But that is definitely an issue. And to convert this here for my friends in America, where I live, I know this was done in Sweden, so it's it's meters, it's metric, and that's clearly an inferior measurement. That is 2,952 feet. Using the correct form of measurement here. So I know all my European listeners are shaking their head right now, shaking their fists at their stereo, their podcast player, whatever. But okay, the point stands that buttons are better. Now the thing is, okay, if you assume that that's 900 meters that your eyes are off the road, and the buttons are 300 meters, 306, that your eyes are also off the road, it's a shorter distance. But there is another layer to this, which is that with buttons, with dials, especially in a car, perhaps your own car that you are familiar with, you've had for a long time. You've had the time to build up the muscle memory of where those buttons and knobs are. You don't even need to take your eyes off the road. That's the thing with buttons. You don't even need to take your eyes off the road. I mean, you can be driving, one hand on the wheel, looking forward, turn on your defroster. You don't even need to look at it. So even comparing it apples for apples doesn't work because a touchscreen muscle memory doesn't work as well. Now, sure, some functions maybe on the home screen of the touchscreen, maybe that works. But especially if you have to go into any menus or pages to do any of those functions, it really is tough to say that you have muscle memory and the ability to know that you tapped on the screen exactly where that little hitbox or that button is and exactly in the right way to go into this next menu and then tap in another spot. Trust me, it's really hard. Have you ever used your smartphone blindfolded? I don't know. Now, granted, high schoolers have somehow an innate ability to use their touchscreen keyboards on their phone underneath their desk without looking at it and type perfectly. But we're not talking about high schoolers. They're another species, really. So aside from that, if you've ever tried to use your smartphone blindfolded, you'll know what that's like. And so the whole point is that as car enthusiasts, we tend to like older cars, and buttons tend to be the centerpiece of the control system in those cars. And buttons don't have to look bad. People are like, ooh, I like the touchscreen. It looks so clean. It looks so good. Yeah, it does, but a nice button setup doesn't have to be bad. I'll use one of my own cars as an example. The Honda S2000 has a very driver-focused array of buttons. It's not ugly. In fact, I would argue it's a great-looking interior. All the buttons face the driver on these two stacks of the dash that kind of point towards you. And And you've got everything you need, your radio controls, your climate controls, within a hand's width from the steering wheel. You can keep your hand on the wheel and touch the buttons still because it's right behind it. Great design. Just because it has buttons doesn't mean it has to look bad. I'm just saying. So there you go. Science has proven that buttons are the winner. Fight me on it. And also fight science because they did more research than I did. Now, hey, coming up, we're going to talk about how New York is going to put speed limiters into cars, and just maybe, if you live there, what you can do about it. That's coming up next, right here.
Did you know there's a rare but serious condition affecting 1 out of every million? Most are born with it, and despite decades of research, doctors struggle to find a cure. The truth is, thousands of people simply don't know what cars are. For those affected, things are grim, but recent developments show promising success. New clinical trials using breakthrough audio technology have shown a 69% improvement in patients with the most severe symptoms. Treatments vary, but one day we may see a cure. More information is available at throttlewarrior.com.
All right, here we are rocking it on the Automotive ADHD Show, heard right here as a podcast. Also on the radio, 91.7 KLZR. That car sound was courtesy of Josh Maldonado. Speaking of Labor Day, speaking of jobs, Josh has the coolest job. I mean, for one, he's a longtime listener of the show. He's been sending car sounds in probably since I started doing this show. And Josh is fantastic. However, his job is also really cool. He works at a shop that specializes in NSXs. Yes, and specializes in doing boosted NSXs, which is exactly what you heard right there. That was a boosted NSX. I love NSXs, and I think if you add boost, that's even cooler. I mean, they're fantastic. I do aspire one day to own an NSX, but knowing me, it's probably going to have to be the worst example of an NSX I can find, and then I'll spend all the money I saved by buying a crappy NSX. I will have spent double that trying to make it nice. That's what I do with cars. That's why you listen. You listen to a guy like that. Those are my credentials. That's what I did with my S2K. I bought the cheapest one I could find. In fact, it was the cheapest clean title one in the country at the time. And now I've spent a lot more money fixing it than if I had just bought a clean one. But you know what? We don't do these things for rational reasons. Of course, Josh, I want to thank you for sending that car sound in. I want to thank you for also being such a longtime listener of the show. You are fantastic. It makes my day knowing that you enjoy the show, and I absolutely love that. And those car sounds are cool. And I won't say I'm jealous that you work around NSXs and fun cars every day. I won't say I'm jealous. I might be, but I won't say it. So anyway, there we go. Hey, before I talk about speed limits in New York, I want to touch on just a really quick thing, which is Toyota. I love Toyota, right? You know this. You know this as a listener. I own several Toyota products. None of them are new. However, Toyota is doing some interesting things with some of their electric car concepts. And some recent information was, you could say, maybe leaked by the Chinese Ministry of Industry, who I guess has to approve things and cars and stuff that gets sold in China. Toyota is working on, I guess, having one of its electric cars approved for sale in China. And it's an electric car. Who cares? Whatever. It's basically they're saying that it's going to be Toyota's competition to the Tesla Model 3. Hey, that's fine. Electric cars are great. But they're a little soulless. That's like, what's the difference between one electric car and the other? You have the same drivetrains, essentially. There's no character. All the character of the car has to be made up. The character you lose in having an internal combustion engine has to be made up for in design and styling and quality and materials, things like that. And that being said, the name is particularly problematic to me. That's what I want to comment on here, because it's called the BZ3. What the hell does BZ3 stand for? And it's apparently an offshoot of a concept car Toyota had debuted earlier this year called the BZ SDN. Well, what the hell is a BZ SDN? These names don't don't make sense. Now, this is going to be similar, reportedly, and hat tip to Adam Ismail from Jalopnik for this information, but this is supposedly going to be similar to the BZ4X, which is currently being manufactured in China with in cooperation with another company, a manufacturing firm. They're already working on these things. We have seen the BZ4X. It's like a RAV4, but it's electric. BZ4X, BZ3, BZ3 SDN. What the heck do any of these names mean? They're meaningless. They mean nothing. Okay, Toyota is, and I love their products for the most part, but they can do things. They can do wrong. I don't love them so much to say they can't do wrong, even though you can probably quote me saying Toyota can do no wrong in a previous episode. But that said, I've called them out before with the key fob subscriptions and stuff, subscription service for using your key fob. Ridiculous. But the naming here is like they're going the route of I think luxury car manufacturers. You think of Mercedes. The names of Mercedes cars tend to be complicated and have numbers and letters and not actual words because it's sophisticated. The same thing with BMW. The same thing with virtually all other luxury car manufacturers. Even Lexus took this up. Lexus being an offshoot of Toyota, Lexus being sold as the luxury brand here in the United States, even in the 90s took this approach with its LS series vehicles, LS 300 or whatever, IS 300 as well, the Altezza. The IS 300, by the way, that's a great car. As it was called, the Altezza in Japan, the home of the that vehicle was the home of the 3SGE Beams, which is a very cool engine, and they were sold here in the United States with GE 2Js, which is naturally aspirated 2JZ. I digress. However, this isn't new. So Toyota's done this before, using letters and numbers together to make a car name. But this isn't sold as a Lexus. This isn't sold as anything like that. This vehicle is being sold as a Toyota, and that to me means it should be called something like Corolla, Avalon, maybe, something like that. It doesn't make sense. Camry, Corolla, those are Toyotas to me. And I think you would have better appeal as a manufacturer if you stuck with that. If Toyota stuck with calling things as customers are already used to hearing, I think you'll have a much better time with that. A customer's going to say, "Ooh, it's a Toyota. What's a BZ4XZY 213? Or what does that mean?" It means nothing. It is meaningless. I mean, sure, maybe, in years past, the name of a car, if it had numbers in it, like something 200 or say S2000, I'll use my own car as an example again. That the 2000 stands for the engine displacement. That's 2000 cc's, which is 2 liters, right? But it's meaningless in an electric car. You don't have displacement. Maybe it can mean kilowatts. Okay, does the BZ3 stand for 3 kilowatts? Well, that's too low. 3,000 kilowatts? I don't know. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. And if you're trying to sell to first-time electric car buyers who are leery of maybe their first electric car purchase or maybe a little more conservative about this, you want to bring them in with something familiar. They say, "Oh, I remember my Corolla. I had a Corolla when I was in high school. I loved it. It ran for 1,000,000 miles." Okay, this is the new Corolla EV. And they'll say, "Oh, Corolla, I like the Corolla." It's all about that association. That association of stuff like that is also the same reason I will say I'll be a little bit of a hypocrite and say manufacturers bringing back nameplates for things that don't make sense, just because they want to cash in on the nameplate value of a car. Ooh, people remember these for being really good. I'll be a hypocrite here. I think if the car isn't close enough to what the original was supposed to represent, maybe you should call it something different. But something like a commuter car that's practical, maybe it's a crossover, whatever, calling it a Corolla or as part of the Corolla series of cars wouldn't necessarily violate those ideals. And I think it would be beneficial. So Toyota I think's got to rethink this whole BZX4Z123 LMNOP naming scheme. I think they need to rethink that. Tesla, of course, is kind of going this route too with Model 3, Model S, Model Y. I guess they can't use Model T. That's Ford. But same difference here. I think cars should have cool names. I mean, I really do. Cars should definitely have cool, interesting names. Toyota has interesting names for cars. I mean, Supra. That's a cool name for a car. I mean, a BMW. I'm just kidding. But that is a cool name. I enjoy that. So, well, you know what? I think this is still early stuff. It's still early stuff. Now, the BZ4X crossover, that is the one that currently exists, and there have been a number of issues with them. And Toyota's first foray into a true plug-in electric haven't been the greatest with the BZ4X. They've been having recalls. They've been having issues. So I would wait it out. I would wait that out. In fact, I would wait out the whole electric car thing and just keep driving my 40-year-old Corollas and Hondas and stuff. So that's fine by me. But, the name. Come on, a name makes a car. A name really does. So anyway, hey, I want to talk about this next because this is really important if you are an auto enthusiast, and you probably are. You're listening to this show. And if you're not an auto enthusiast by now, I seek to change that. I will convert you. So anyway, I'm on my crusade to convert people into loving cars. What's wrong with that? I love that. But New York City has been known for some questionable laws in the past and doing different things. But the newest thing that they have done is they have implemented a program with the entire city's fleet of 30,000 vehicles. Now, these are vehicles owned by the city. These are vehicles used for sanitation workers, parking officials, police. Basically, all of their government vehicles have been enrolled in a program that will use what they call intelligent speed assistance. And this is going to basically, to put it simply, the car is going to have a computer that's going to know the speed limit of whatever road you're on. Now, is it doing that via GPS? Is it doing that via reading road signs? That's not clear. The idea is it is going to know whatever the speed limit is, and it is going to limit you to that speed limit. And they are implementing this with all of their government vehicles. That's fine. It's their government vehicles. You know what? They can do that. The problem here is because a Manhattan state senator, his name's Brad Holliman, however that's pronounced, he proposed some legislation a few weeks back that would require any consumer vehicle to be manufactured after the date of January 1st, 2024 to have the same system. And they say, quote, with advanced safety technology. And the advanced safety technology in the bill is listed as being the Active Intelligent Speed Assistance, ISA, and Active or Advanced Emergency Braking, which is AEB. I'm giving you these definitions because you might see them pop up elsewhere. And then they also want them to have emergency lane keeping systems. And there's a bunch of these. Basically, there's blind spot stuff. They want to mandate that. They want to mandate a number of things. They also want to mandate event data recorders, much like an aircraft. The FAA, Federal Aviation Administration, requires that airplanes have, they call it the little black box that records everything that happens inside the cockpit, that records every movement made on the controls, that records things about engines and, the current status of the airplane. Now, I spent some time working in Civil Air Patrol and in search and rescue right out of high school as a volunteer, and I will tell you from personal experience that the black boxes aren't black. They're usually orange with a bunch of high-vis reflective stuff on them. The idea is you're supposed to find them in a plane crash, looking through rubble. That's the idea. They get called black boxes. That's a misnomer. But the fact is they want to have something similar in cars, and I see this as a problem, and I'll break this down. I see, for one, the event data recorders as a little bit of a problem because that delves into the realm of personal privacy. How much of this data is actually being recorded, and is it going to be used to incriminate you in something meaningless? If you're issued a speeding ticket and you want to fight that speeding ticket, is the judge going to say, well, we'll look at your event data recorder and see who's really right? And what if there's a malfunction with the event data recorder? Because vehicles are not maintained to the standard that airplanes are. Airplanes in commercial service that have to be tested, and every single little detail has a checklist that has to be done, and a maintenance checklist that has to be done at certain time intervals. Cars are not maintained on that level, not on any any level like that. And you could have malfunctions with your event data recorder that could then be a problem if something happens. I think it's a problem just to be recording that information in general. Likewise, it could also get you out of a ticket. It's a double-edged sword. Say you get a speeding ticket and you're like, that was bogus. And then you say, here's the data from my car's black box. I was not speeding. Or at least it was not indicated that I was speeding. But then they'll probably say, well, your car, we can't trust the maintenance on that. We're going to go with the official report. It goes both ways. So I think just not having it at all is probably the better solution here. Now, let's get to the speed thing, the active intelligent speed assistance. This is similar to something that has happened now in the European Union. And now the European Union has already instated this requirement and said that this will come into effect July 2024. For my friends listening in Europe, this is already going on for you if you're in a country that is within the EU. And the thing is, the good news with the European implementation of this system is that it is passive. The system would alert the driver that, hey, heads up, you're going a little fast. It would alert the driver, but it would do nothing else. The privacy concern here, and some Europeans are concerned that if this data is transmitted to like law enforcement actively, if there's a constant connection between the vehicle and a central system that tracks this, you would speed in the car and then you'd just be issued a ticket through the mail. That's a problem. I don't think we need that. But right now, it's passive. All it would do is tell you that, hey, heads up, you're speeding. It's like the little chime in Initial D with the AE86, once he goes over 60 miles an hour, 100 kilometers an hour, it starts dinging, ding, 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 ding. If you ever watch that, you know what I'm talking about. If you've never watched that, you have no idea what I'm talking about, and that's okay, because it's not really important. But the thing is, where the bill in New York differs is that it is not the, quote, passive implementation of this style of system. No, they want, in New York, they want this to be active, meaning that if the computer in the car says, you're on a 35 and you're doing 38, that's a problem, I'm going to slow you back down to 35. That means the computer is actually in control of the car. This is entirely different from the European one. I don't like the Europeans' implementation of this. I think this doesn't need to exist at all. I will come out on the record saying this doesn't need to exist in any way, shape, or form. However, the passive system is probably better than the active system, which, again, the passive one just tells you that you're speeding. Some cars already have that. If you run Waze, for instance, if you run Google Maps and you have that configured, It'll show your speed via GPS, and then it'll tell you, hey, you're speeding. You might be 5 over, 10 over, whatever. It'll tell you that. That's a lot similar to this. But in New York, they are coming heavy-handed with this. They don't want you to speed for any reason whatsoever. And that's a problem for reasons of personal freedom, I would say. Also, reasons in emergencies. You would, if you say you were driving your pregnant wife to the hospital, she was about to give birth, and you had to get there fast, which is arguably a justifiable reason to speed, even is protected in some cases of the law, that if it is a genuine emergency and that calling emergency services in an ambulance would take too long or would be life-threatening, you'll probably get out of speeding in this case. Well, that just wouldn't happen. You would be in a hurry. You'd be like, I got to get my wife to the hospital. Let's go. And then the car would say, oh, hey, you can't speed. It's 65 here. It's not 75. And then it would back you back down again. I think that's a major problem. Again, that's a violation of your personal property rights. That's a violation of your freedom. That's all of the above, okay? So I'll come out as saying I don't like that. Now, here's the next thing. What is speed really the problem? Because I'm going to argue this. I am going to argue this here, okay? I did some research, and I looked at a survey from the National Motor Vehicle, it's called the National Motor Vehicle Crash Causation Survey, and this is made by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. There we go. I got to get those words out. Slow down. Read the words. This is a study, and it's from 2008. It is a little bit dated. I will say it is a little bit dated. 2008 was a little while ago now, but it's the most recent information I could find that actually addressed all of these points. And the fact is, the way we drive cars isn't that different than 2008. If anything, we have more distractions now, but cars have also become safer. Cars have been able to travel more quickly. They could travel faster and be safer in doing so. So But let's just take that with a grain of salt. It's a little bit older, but I don't think where it counts, I don't think this study is going to be any different than if something was more recent. And it lists a number of crashes from July 3rd, 2005 to December 31st, 2007. That was the window of this survey. And by the way, it's a 42-page study, or make that 47-page study if you want to read it. I mean, it's a fascinating read. It is riveting. There's graphs and data, and it's really long. And anyway, the gist of it here, the piece of information that is important is that in that time frame, there were 5,471 crashes. And they listed a number of the critical pre-crash events, or the causation, the things that kind of led up to the crash itself. Jeremy Clarkson, I think, once famously said, and I might be misquoting him, but it's basically, it's not the speed that gets you, it's suddenly becoming stationary. That's what gets you. So yeah, obviously the cause of a crash is that you crashed. I mean, that is the crash. But the things leading up to that crash are what's relevant. And traveling too fast as contributing to a factor of vehicle control loss, losing control of the vehicle because you were traveling too fast for the vehicle to handle that speed, for your suspension, your brakes, your tires, your grip, all of the above to handle that. That accounted for 195 crashes in this study window out of 5,471. Now, what contributed to the biggest number of crashes? Now, that would be 2,185 crashes was the biggest single cause of crashes. The number there is 2,185, and that was caused by turning at a crossing or intersection. Intersections and crossings are more dangerous by a factor of 20 times more dangerous than traveling too fast. So are we banning intersections? I don't think we're banning